I woke up this morning and reached for a glass of water on the nightstand, and for a split second, I expected my hand to move with the same quick precision it had when I was a young man working the lines in the factory. Instead, there was that familiar, heavy hesitation, that stiffness in the joints that reminds me exactly where I am in the timeline of a human life. My name is Arthur. I am 88 years old, and I am living inside a body that feels like a house I didn't agree to rent, because in my mind, I am still 25. It is a strange, silent sort of grief to wake up every day and realize that the world sees a relic when you still feel like the protagonist of a story that hasn't even reached its middle yet. When I look in the mirror to shave, I don't recognize the man looking back at me immediately. I see the liver spots and the way the skin hangs loose around my jaw, and I have to remind myself that this is me now. In my head, my hair is still thick and dark, and my eyes don't need these heavy spectacles to see the dust motes dancing in the light. It's not that I'm delusional or that I've lost my grip on reality. It's more like a permanent state of jet lag between my spirit and my bones. I remember the feeling of running down a hill so fast that my legs couldn't quite keep up with my chest. That sensation of being completely untethered and invincible. I still feel that phantom energy vibrating inside me. But when I try to stand up too quickly from my armchair, my knees give a sharp, clicking protest that brings me right back to the present. I spent most of my youth waiting for my life to start. I think most young people do that. You're 25 and you think you're just in the dress rehearsal. You assume that old age is something that happens to other people, or something that you'll be ready for when it finally arrives, like a season you can prepare for by buying a heavier coat. But it doesn't work like that. You don't feel yourself getting older in the way you feel a cold coming on. You just accumulate days and months and years, and all the while the you inside, the part that dreams, the part that falls in love, the part that wants to drive too fast with the windows down, that part stays exactly the same. It doesn't wrinkle. It doesn't get cataracts. It stays 25, or maybe 30, perched and waiting for a future that has already passed it by. I remember a Saturday in the summer of 1962. I was 24, turning 25, and I was standing on a pier with a girl named Evelyn. The air smelled like salt and fried dough, and I remember thinking that I had all the time in the world. I felt like I was standing at the edge of an infinite ocean, and every direction I looked was a possibility. I can still feel the heat of that sun on my shoulders. I can still feel the specific way my heart beat when she laughed. If I close my eyes right now, I am back on that pier. I am not an 88-year-old man with a heart condition and a cabinet full of prescriptions. I am that boy. The tragedy of aging isn't that you lose your memories. It's that the memories stay so vivid, while the ability to recreate them vanishes. You become a library of experiences that nobody wants to check out anymore. People treat you differently when you reach a certain age. They start talking to you in that loud, slow voice, as if your hearing loss has somehow affected your intellect. They see the cane or the walker, and they assume your mind is as fragile as your hips. They don't realize that inside this brittle shell there is a man who still remembers the thrill of a first kiss, the terror of a first job, and the crushing weight of a first real loss. They don't see the fire, they only see the ash. And sometimes you start to believe them. You start to settle into the role of the elderly person, because it's easier than trying to explain that you're still in there, screaming to be seen as a peer rather than a patient. I lost Evelyn 12 years ago. We were married for 54 years. When she died, a part of my youth died with her because she was the only one left who truly remembered me when I was fast and strong. She was my witness. Now when I walk through the grocery store, I am just a slow-moving obstacle for young mothers with strollers. They don't know that I once carried a woman across a threshold, or that I once hiked 10 miles into the woods just to see the sunrise from a specific ridge. To the world, my history has been erased by my appearance. I am a ghost haunting my own life. There is a beauty in it, though, if you look close enough. A strange, quiet beauty. Because I am still 25 in my head, I haven't lost the capacity for wonder. I see the way the light hits the trees in the park, and it moves me just as much as it did 60 years ago. I hear a certain song on the radio, and my foot starts tapping with the same rhythm it had at the high school dance. My body is failing the marathon, but my heart is still at the starting line, ready to go. I've realized that aging is really just a long process of narrowing down what matters. When you're young, everything matters. Every slight, every ambition, every shiny new thing. When you're 88, most of that falls away. You realize that the you that stays young is the part of you that loves. I spent so many years worrying about the future, about what I would become, about whether I was successful enough. Now that I am in the future, I see how much of that was a waste of breath. The only thing that was ever real was the feeling of being alive in the moment. The tragedy isn't that we get old. The tragedy is that we don't realize we're young while it's happening. We treat our youth like a bank account we can never overdraw, spending it on things that don't satisfy, only to find the balance at zero just when we finally learn how to shop. I look at my hands now, and I see my father's hands. I remember looking at his hands when I was a boy and thinking they looked like old leather. I couldn't imagine my own hands ever looking like that, and yet here they are. It's a relay race, I suppose. He handed the baton to me, and eventually I'll have to drop it. But the runner, the spirit inside, he's still got plenty of wind in him. He's still looking for the next turn in the road. He's still curious. He's still 25. The hardest part is the silence. Most of the people who knew me as a young man are gone now. My brothers, my best friend from the service, the guys I used to play cards with on Friday nights. When they go, they take a piece of your youth with them. You become the sole keeper of a world that no longer exists. I can describe the way the air felt before the city built over the old meadows. But there's no one left to say, "Yes, Arthur, I remember that too." You become an island of memory in a sea of new faces. It's a lonely thing, being the last one who knows the truth about a certain time and place. But I've found that if I sit very still, especially in the late afternoon when the sun is low, the gap between the 88-year-old and the 25-year-old starts to close. I stop feeling the ache in my lower back. I stop hearing the hum of the oxygen concentrator in the corner. I just exist. And in that existence, age doesn't mean anything. Time is just a concept we invented to try and make sense of the sunrise and sunset. In the grand scheme of things, 88 years is just a blink. It's a heartbeat. I've lived a whole life, and yet it feels like I only just got here. If I could go back and talk to that 25-year-old version of myself, the one who thought he had forever, I don't think I'd tell him to do anything differently. I wouldn't tell him to save more money or work harder. I wouldn't even warn him about the mistakes he's going to make. I think I'd just tell him to feel his feet on the ground. I'd tell him to notice the way his breath feels in his lungs, and the way his skin feels in the wind. I'd tell him that the man he sees in the mirror 40 years from now isn't an intruder. He's just a traveler who's been on a very long, very beautiful walk. I know what's coming. I'm not afraid of the end, because the part of me that is 25 doesn't believe in endings. It only knows the now. It only knows the feeling of wanting to see what's over the next hill. My body might be tired and my legs might be heavy, but the pilot of this ship is still wide awake, still staring out at the horizon with the same wide-eyed intensity he had when he was a boy. So, if you see an old man sitting on a park bench, staring off into nothing. Don't just see a tired set of bones. Don't just pity the wrinkles or the slow gait. Try to remember that inside that man, there is someone just like you. Someone who feels the same hunger for life, the same fear of being forgotten, and the same joy at a simple kindness. I am 88 years old and my story is almost over. But the boy who started the journey is still right here, and he wouldn't trade a single wrinkle for the world, because every one of them is a map of where he's been. The world moves so fast now. Everything is digital, everything is instant. Sometimes I feel like I'm standing on a train platform and the express is roaring past me, and I can't even see the faces in the windows. But then I remember that the speed doesn't matter. The destination is the same for all of us. What matters is the quality of the stillness when the train stops. I've learned to appreciate the stillness. I've learned that you don't need to be fast to be deep. You don't need to be strong to be significant. I look at the young people today and I see them rushing, always looking at their phones, always trying to get to the next thing. I want to tell them to stop, just for a second. I want to tell them that one day they will be 88, and they will realize that the next thing was never the point. The point was the this thing. The point was the coffee in your hand, the person sitting across from you, the cold air on your face. I am tired now. The day is ending and the 88-year-old body needs to rest. But as I close my eyes, I can feel the 25-year-old me getting ready for a dream. In my dreams, I can still run. In my dreams, Evelyn is still there and her hair is still golden. And we are standing on that pier and the ocean goes on forever. I suppose that's the secret. We don't really grow old. We just grow outward like the rings of a tree, adding layers to a core that stays exactly the same from the moment we are born until the moment we return to the earth. I'm 88 and I've realized that the greatest gift of life isn't the youth you have at the beginning, but the spirit you keep until the end. If you can keep that fire burning, even if it's just a tiny flicker behind a pair of old eyes, then you've won. You've outrun time itself. And as I sit here in the quiet of my room, I realize that I am not an old man waiting for the end. I am a young man who has lived a very long time. And honestly, it's been a hell of a ride.